Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this exciting event on inclusive entrepreneurship, where we'll discuss how Rutgers is empowering Black and Latino business owners. I'm Pavita Howe, Director of Entrepreneurship Partnerships in the Corporate Engagement Center at Rutgers, and I'm joined today by Chancellor Nancy Cantor, who serves as the Chancellor for the Rutgers Newark campus, as well as Lyneir Richardson, Executive Director of the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development, known as CUDE. Lyneir is also the founder of the Black and Latino Angel Investor Fund. The program is brought to you today by Rutgers Entrepreneurs and co-sponsored by the Rutgers University Alumni Association. And I'd like to give a special thank you to the Alumni Advancement Events team for their expert support in organizing this event. Rutgers Entrepreneurs is a new initiative created by the Rutgers Corporate Engagement Center to help bring visibility to entrepreneurial activity happening at Rutgers and make connections into the university for purposes such as research, talent, and various partnerships and expertise, including mentoring, for people connecting into the university. We also provide resources and connections for faculty, alumni, and student entrepreneurs who are interested in building and growing their business and looking for support from their Rutgers community. So we invite you to connect with us via our website and social media channels, and we'll provide information about that at the end of the event. And you'll also receive information after the event on how to connect with us. So now I'm pleased to welcome Chancellor Cantor and Lyneir Richardson. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And we've received several questions from the audience today. So we have some questions to start off the event, and then we'll try and get to as many of the questions as we can from audience members. And again, you can connect with us after the event if you are still looking for answers that we didn't provide. So let's start with a question for Chancellor Cantor. Chancellor, can you tell us about Public Engaged Scholarship and how Rutgers' commitment to diversity and inclusion is carrying over to the support of entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Pavita. I want to make some general comments first, if I might, and then go into the question. So in setting the stage for our discussion today of inclusive entrepreneurship, I want to focus in on the pressing need to create a more equitable and diverse business landscape, and to take a racial equity lens on economic development more generally. And of course, CUDE has been doing that since its founding over a decade ago. And in this regard, I want to pause a moment, if I may, to honor and recognize one of CUDE's earliest leaders, our distinguished professor and former provost, Jerome Williams, who unexpectedly passed away last week, and who tirelessly devoted his scholarship and teaching to growing a more diverse professoriate and entrepreneurial community. I'll mention, I'm sure as we go, Jerome's recent work, but I'm sure Lyneir will as well. So turning now to the focus that we at Rutgers Newark, RBS, Rutgers Business School, and CUDE take on equitable growth, it's clear that the last year has thrown a spotlight on the urgency of this work. We've seen in heartbreaking ways the disparate impact of the pandemic on economic and educational access and health and well-being more generally in our Black, Latinx, and Indigenous communities of color. And while this is particularly stark, of course, at this time of reckoning, we all know that systemic racism and barriers to economic opportunity have been around for a very long time. So I think we all agree that we must redouble all our efforts going forth, both in the name of justice, but also because it's good business, in order to achieve full participation of our talent pool so that we can reap what my friend Scott Page calls the diversity bonus in a knowledge economy. In keeping with this approach, Rutgers Newark is committed to cultivating an inclusive next generation talent pool, both in our students and in our community broadly defined, and that's what we'll talk about today. We want to be part of closing the wealth gap. And you all know that that wealth gap is particularly striking in New Jersey. So my friends at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice just did a report where they showed that the median net worth for New Jersey white families is $309,000, while the median net worth for Black and Latinx families is just $5,900 and $7,020 respectively. That should set the stage. On the one hand, you have this incredibly diverse next generation talent pool, and on the other hand, we have this huge wealth gap. So investing in inclusive entrepreneurship is one really important way to make a difference. And I do want to point to the fact that there's a lot of work at Rutgers Business School and at Rutgers more generally that really points to the need to strengthen our local businesses in an inclusive way. So Kevin Lyons, for example, Lyneir's colleague at Rutgers Business School in the Public-Private Community Partnership Program, has done amazing work to map out the entrepreneurial supply chain possibilities in Newark and in New Jersey more broadly. And this fed right in to the kind of work, the technical assistance work that CUDE does, and also that our law school's entrepreneurship clinic does, where not only law students get trained in entrepreneurship, investment, and legal advice, but they give real legal advice to up-and-coming entrepreneurs. And then this, of course, fed right into the mayor's Hire by Live Newark 2020 campaign. And I want to throw out just some statistics on that again to put a fine point on why we need to do this investment. So as of 2017, only 18% of the many thousands of jobs in Newark went to local residents. And that's not because local anchor institutions, universities, hospitals, corporations, cultural centers weren't hiring, but they weren't hiring with a local focus. And that has made such a difference. Newark 2020. We at Rutgers and Rutgers Biomedical Health Sciences in Newark, we have increased, for example, by 572 Newark residents, our employment base, in just those 3 years since that campaign was done. And then Kevin also showed that, in fact, we could map out the sourcing opportunities for all those 16 big anchor institutions, including Rutgers Newark, to source, to do procurement locally. So at Rutgers Newark, for example, we've jumped in that 3-year period from 21% of our procurement being locally directed to 30%. That's a big deal. And if all the anchor institutions keep doing that, then the local entrepreneurs, the startups, the small and medium-sized businesses, and Kevin has mapped at least 500 of those that are here, they can get investment. And then the kinds of angel investment fund that Lyneir and Jeff Robinson and others have mounted, that can get investment if we think about that kind of local investment. So I'm sure that Lyneir will talk about his amazing work at CUDE and all his colleagues. They've done a Newark Media and Arts Business Hub, which I particularly love, at Express Newark in the Haynes Building. They've done the Black and Latinx Tech Initiative and Angel Fund. So I'll leave that to him, but let me just quickly mention that the other side of how you invest in local businesses in terms of hiring and procurement and entrepreneurial training and legal advice is that you do in fact create the next generation. So Ted Baker and his colleagues, for example, have done an amazing program they call Are You Flourishing? To train formerly incarcerated individuals who are returning to the community, who have entrepreneurial spirit and ideas in how to in fact start those businesses. And in our Honors Living Learning community, they're going to create, as of next fall, an urban solutions lab where there'll be some startups starting, and then our great Honors Living Learning students, our Prudential scholars, many of whom are from Newark itself, will be sitting there side by side learning how to address the urban solutions that come with entrepreneurial startups and small businesses. So we are ready here. We're doing it across the board in all of our schools and colleges. And let me turn to Lyneir, who I know can fill in some really important details there.
Thank you, Chancellor. So, well over 10 years ago, as you mentioned, the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development was started as an idea with a former colleague, D.T. Ogilvy, Dr. D.T. Ogilvy, Jeff Robinson, Jerome Williams, and others, really focused on how do you help create more diverse entrepreneurs? How do you grow and make that connection between the growth of the local economy? And it's been a lot of fun. Over the last 10 years, we've now have assisted over 500 entrepreneurs. Over 70% of them are entrepreneurs of color. Over 60% are women. I'm proud of the fact that over 40% of them now generate more than $1 million a year of revenue. And I always talk about that $1 million of revenue sort of target, not as a end-all be-all, but a threshold of business viability, of customer acceptance, first opportunity to talk to bankers and investors. And it's something that we really are pushing to get more entrepreneurs to that mark. We created something last year we called the 1,000 Million Initiative. Could we help 1,000 entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs of color, get to $1 million a year of revenue? And, 1,000 times a million, I always sort of quiz everybody, is $1 billion. Could our little center have $1 billion of impact? And then finally, just so I can give Pavita an opportunity with their questions, what I'm most proud of, and I think our alumni should be proud of, is Rutgers. So you just heard our chancellor has, an international reputation for publicly engaged scholarship and advocating for the benefits and the needs and the opportunities there. And the dean of our business school has made social impact one of our 3 strategic priorities. And so that's the environment of which our center operates in. We open the doors, we make space, equipment, and resources available to entrepreneurs in the community. So the little center I lead is helping really the local restaurant down the street. We had the Green Chickpea owner on last night. Black Swan Coffee is helping launch tech startups. It's helping to connect our local entrepreneurs to our anchor institutions as well. And that work is not it's not something that is done lightly. This is passion work, right? It's passion, it's purpose, it's focused on helping entrepreneurs be more profitable. And the goal really is to help our community, both local, state, and our nation, be more profitable as we help more diverse entrepreneurs connect to economic development, our economic growth goals.
Thank you, Chancellor and Lyneir. There's so much going on across the campus, across the university, and at the business school. And as the Chancellor mentioned, the pandemic has brought about a lot more visibility to the disparity that's happening and the underserved populations who suffer more. And I know that a lot of that translates into entrepreneurship as well and the challenges that they face. So one of the things that we're very proud of is the fact that these programs aren't brand new. They didn't appear in 2020. They've been around for 10 years and more. And Rutgers has been supporting people and finding ways to grow the economy around us and to connect with people and mentor them. So that's really wonderful to hear, and we appreciate that background too. Lyneir, when we first met and we spoke about how you were working through the CUDE program with various groups and several different programs that you offer, you talked a bit about the experience of Black and Latinx entrepreneurs and some of the challenges they face. Can you give people some background on what that experience is like and what their journey is like and how it's different from other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, and I'll talk about it in the current context of The pandemic, I call it the protest and the political pandemonium, right? PPP of 2020. That was my world of PPP, right? We have run capacity building programs, as I mentioned, helping entrepreneurs get to the next level, develop strategic plans, make connections to, corporate partners, to really imagine how to be profitable and strategies for having good cash flow. Right? That's been the core of our work for 10 years. But what became crystal clear to all of us, even slightly before the pandemic, was the need for the connection to capital. And so, while we were doing capacity building programs and, connecting entrepreneurs to contracting opportunities, this consistent, unrelenting, battle cry of access to capital. We need capital. We got to figure out how to get capital to grow. And what became, I think, more of an opportunity for us after last year, given the urgency of the moment, is for us to start to research and brainstorm and set goals around how do we help entrepreneurs of color get capital to start businesses, to sustain, and to grow. And as the chancellor alluded to, this requirement, this need for capital is really based in sort of the history of the economy in the US, right? It's based in systemic issues, systemic racism, systemic inequality. So if we just acknowledge that and how do we imagine new ways of getting capital? How do we create new vehicles? How do we create new knowledge around helping entrepreneurs of color get capital? Could we create, right now there's 125,000 Black-owned businesses in the US. For us to be at parity, there should be almost 1 million, right? So the average Black-owned business generates $1 million a year in revenue. The average white-owned business, $6 million. Can we help people? But to get that growth, to start more, we need capital. I always joke, I've been an entrepreneur now myself for 27 years. When I started, everyone told me, oh, you got to do friends and family. Do your friends and family round. You got to go to your friends and family. And so I went around to my friends and family and I got a round of applause, right? It wasn't as if they didn't want to help me. It was because redlining, lower home appraisal values, systemic issues that prevent my uncles and grandfather and aunts from being able to provide the first $20,000 or $30,000, or even early home ownership, right? Just being able, 90% of businesses don't get outside capital. They get it from the entrepreneurs' own savings and their equity they build up in their homes. But again, because of the systemic issues in our economy, just being able to borrow from your home equity to start a business or to grow or to invest in a new idea is just not as evident. So all of this year is really about how do we intentionally focus on getting capital to help more people of color own businesses. I'm a real estate guy, own commercial real estate. Wealth is created by owning assets that generate revenue and appreciate over time. So if we want to address racial wealth gap, want to close the racial wealth gap, our focus is help more people of color start, own, grow profitable, businesses with recurring income and appreciation potential.
Right. So tell us about some of the programs at Rutgers and how we're helping people to do that.
So I'll do a little, just a rapid fire of just our Q programs. And again, the cool thing about Rutgers is, there are a number of esteemed professors and colleagues who are doing great work, right? Chancellor mentioned Kevin Lyneir. The chancellor mentioned the work Ted Baker's doing, prolific scholars. My, closest colleague and fraternity brother and Rutgers graduate, Jeff Robinson, his work around social entrepreneurship. Mukesh Patel has supported our work in our startup. So there's a host of, the risk of talking about our programs, we're going to forget to mention somebody. So I'm going to just talk about the 4 or 5 programs we run, with the caveat of there's a whole lot of people doing cool things, and we're not around entrepreneurship, and it's not just us. But we run something that our most recent program is the Black and Latino Technology Initiative. Jeff Robinson was the thought leader around the initiation of this program. He did early research that showed, everything from SBIR grants that people of color weren't applying as often, and weren't, as a result, weren't receiving SBIR grant funding, which is non-dilutive capital that entrepreneurs could grow their businesses. There were technology accelerators that opened in Newark, Newark Venture Partners, IDT, and others, that we wanted to help more people of color get, admitted into and get early stage capital. So we launched our Black and Latino Technology Initiative, which was funded by, big philanthropy, Certain Foundation, to help entrepreneurs both prepare to make pitches, to understand sort of cap tables and formation, and to have startup ideas, growth company startup ideas. And we ran that. Mukesh is literally turned on a fire hose of information to help entrepreneurs understand what they needed to know to launch and grow technology ventures. And out of that, we then formed our Black and Latino Angel Investment Fund. The goal was, all right, people still needed that first $50,000 or $100,000, that friends and family round. We're trying to institutionalize that friends and family round, right? So, we have our, Jeff Robinson is one of I call him Uncle Jeff, who's investing. And we have, one of the partners in Newark Venture Partners has invested, Queen Latifah's accountant, right? The local entrepreneur down the street, right? So that are committed to invest in entrepreneurs. We've run for 10 years our Entrepreneurs Pioneers Initiative, which really focuses on helping first generation entrepreneurs get a place, find the resources, make strategic connections, get the capacity building programs. The chancellor mentioned our Newark Business Hub, which is really focused on helping creatives, filmmakers, bloggers, videographers, performing artists, not only just create, but to create businesses and alliances that would make them more profitable. The goal there was, could they hire one person, right? Because instead of just gigging, could they hire one person? Finally, I just mentioned we started a program that helped our retail entrepreneurs, and this became much more relevant in the pandemic. We called it the Urban Retail Acceleration Program. The goal was to help retailers and restaurants who make our communities interesting and vibrant. The first part was, can we help them own their real estate, right? And in appreciating areas, can we help these business owners own real estate? But in the pandemic, it became, can we help them understand where to get all of the publicly available resources, government, private sector? We started a great digital marketing program. One of the Rutgers professors who's like a guru in digital marketing. And she's now with our students helping entrepreneurs that we all know and love be able to benefit from digital marketing initiatives. So on and on. The goal is rapid experimentation and being really customer friendly. What does the business owner need to continue to grow? And how can we use the platform of Rutgers to connect them to capital or expertise or contract opportunities and other things?
Right. And what some people may not know is that you're helping entrepreneurs of all kinds, whether they're, mom and pop businesses right up to tech and more complex businesses too, that require different kinds of guidance.
Yeah, literally, we have businesses that are generating $100,000 who are in our program, and those some over $10 million. And the cool thing about Rutgers is it's not just once you're in our family, you can continue to be in our family. So, there's every year student consulting opportunities, every year invitations to lectures and new sort of webinars and continuing capacity building initiatives. So from the guy with an idea to the woman who now we have some firms that are generating more than $10 million a year revenue. How do they get to the next level? How do they think about strategic partnerships and alliances? We've had businesses that wanted to sell and exit, had a few exits as well, right? So this is, again, it's passion work, and Rutgers is a special place because it creates there's a whole host of student entrepreneurship programs, but this is our way of allowing students to do work with the entrepreneurs down the street that make our community, healthy and special.
Right. So, and just a side note, I know there are several programs at Rutgers that are looking for experiential learning for students. Is that something that CUDE can offer through their entrepreneurs who are looking for help and students might be able to support?
Yeah, literally every semester, we send out a one-page call. And I mentioned last night we had green chickpea on. Typically, I'll send out the call and I'll invite 10 entrepreneurs or so to come make tell us your story. How'd you start? What do you need help from MBA students on? And my job is to make sure that the work is intellectually interesting enough for our students, but it's also not the students just downloading Wikipedia pages for the entrepreneurs, right? So to make sure that there's value in the relationship. So we, every semester, just in our program, and again, there are other professors who provide experiential learning opportunities, but we have 40 or 50 students every semester, MBA students working with entrepreneurs across the state.
Right. Chancellor, are there any other programs or ways that you'd like to highlight that Rutgers is supporting these entrepreneurs?
Well, I want to zero in on what Lyneir said beautifully in terms of, so if you think of CUDE, I think of CUDE as taking the capital, the expertise, the connections, and following it as a family. Then what I want to do is expand and say, we are actually creating a whole ecosystem. So if you think of the city of Newark, for example, and you think of the pathways to educational opportunity that then lead to make the next pioneers, those entrepreneurs, who then intern with CUDE or then go on to be in the Angel Fund. So let me give you one example. We have a collaboration that Lucille Booker and Sherry and Butterfield have pioneered with Apple called RU Codes to create a data science minor in the School of Arts and Sciences, but for everybody, School of Arts and Sciences at Newark, but for all of our students. And from that RU Codes data science minor, we are then producing a whole diverse, because we're one of the most diverse schools in the nation, set of potential entrepreneurs who could start businesses with the advice of Lyneir and Jeff Robinson and others, and they can invest in them. So I want to emphasize the pathway notion. I said it before about Ted Baker's work with RU Flourishing. Well, there's a whole pathway there. So we have the NJ STEP prison education program that then once people are out of prison, they can get their bachelor's degree at Rutgers Newark, for example, finish their degree. Then they can go on to RU Flourishing and be trained as an entrepreneur. And then they can make sure that they're in Lyneir's family and that they're out there getting the kind of advice they need. So one thing I really want to emphasize is the pathway notion. The second thing I want to emphasize is the notion that Rutgers doesn't do anything alone. We do what I call stackable institutions. So for example, our Braven Accelerator, which is a business accelerator course at Rutgers Newark for first generation, largely students of color, to make sure that they go on and get the right jobs after graduation, and they way outpace their peer group nationally. Braven is connected to a whole set of anchor institution corporations in Newark and small businesses and entrepreneurs. We send Braven interns into Prudential, into PSE&G, but we also will send them into Black Swan and into all the local businesses. So that's one example of partnerships, of stackable institutions. When we think about STEM, because after all, that's going to produce a lot of entrepreneurs of the future, we need to be producing Black and brown entrepreneurs who got training in STEM. Well, we have our Bridges to Baccalaureate partnership funded by the National Science Foundation all across Rutgers with 5 Hispanic serving county colleges, and we're at Rutgers Newark as a Hispanic serving institution. Then they bridge into our Garden State LSAMP, which is to get a bachelor's of science degree in STEM. Then they can bridge into our Bridge to Doctorate program to get a doctorate, and then we'll send them down the street to Lyneir, and they can get that HUA training, right? So these pathways are really, really important. And then we want to think about the whole ecosystem. And that is, Lyneir mentioned the importance of real estate and intergenerational wealth, and Jerome Williams' work on bank lending and the discriminatory basis of bank lending and redlining. We're trying in Newark, as Rutgers Newark, for example, the Center for Law, Inequality, and Metropolitan Equity that David Trout runs, and he connects with Mayor Baraka's Equitable Growth Commission to think about all those vacant properties, to create land banks. Just think about the entrepreneurs who need space. So one of the graduates of Are You Flourishing, formerly incarcerated Tia Ryans, bought, after being in Are You Flourishing and getting her degree at Rutgers Newark, she bought a completely rundown house in the South Ward of Newark with the kinds of help from the legal clinic and others. And it is now a place where formerly incarcerated people who are coming to get degrees, either at Essex County College or at Rutgers Newark or at Rutgers more broadly, can live and learn and create a community. It's that kind of pathway and collaboration that becomes so important. David Trout is doing amazing analyses of the risk of displacement of Newarkers with gentrification. We don't want to be the next Brooklyn, as Mayor Baraka says, but what we do want is that the billions of dollars being invested in Newark help local residents. First, by the wonderful cycle of, victorious cycle, if you will, that McKinsey calls it, of hiring locally into these local businesses, and then they will hire locally, and then they will do larger contracts. So there's that way. But just also think about in the pandemic, think about the mom who has an entrepreneurial idea, who's sitting in an apartment in Newark, creating her business, trying to reach out, getting Lyneir, getting others to help. And then all of a sudden, that block gets bought up by some big corporation coming in. Now we want the big corporation to come in. We're not at all against that, as Mayor Baraka says all the time. But we also want to be able to have all the anchor institutions come together and to invest in that mom who's sitting with her kid, who's doing remote learning, but she's also sparking a new business. And she needs the kinds of real estate and intergenerational help, the capital loaning, the appraisals of her property in order to make that stable. So I just want to emphasize that all the different pieces of equitable growth can be contributed to by faculty, students, and the kinds of institutions that Lyneir runs.
So you mentioned a number of organizations within Newark. Are there any significant partnerships or ties that you have that you'd like to tell people about? Because I know due to your location and the nature of the community, there are strengths in those relationships that help as well.
Well, look, I just want to mention we've benefited by having, strong sort of corporate and, corporate support. And our close work with, Chancellor mentioned Mayor Baraka, I work with the city's economic development, team. Yeah, I love, Mayor Barack, one thing he says is, look, the best way to, deal with gentrification is to own something, right? I love that that mentality. That's the work that we do. But look, Prudential, PNC Bank, JP Morgan Chase, again, our local sort of financial institutions, they've supported our work. This work takes, sort of resources and capital. We've gotten grants from the federal government. We've gotten contracts from the New Jersey EDA, right? All that are focused on doing this work. And again, this is decades now, right? So, PNC Bank has been one of our key contributors now for more than 10 years. So, that work and that commitment and looking for opportunities and new partners, M&T Bank is one of our new partners, sort of supporting us. We always are making an outreach and using those resources to drive the work.
Yeah, and I want to absolutely reinforce that. For example, Shanae Harris from Prudential and I co-chair what we call the Newark Anchor Collaborative, which is a whole set of anchor institutions, PSE&G, Prudential, Mars, Horizon, I know I'm leaving, University Hospital, Barnabas, NJIT, Essex, us, and we all sit around a table quarterly and we say, how can we bring a racial equity lens to investing in local talent, in local businesses? So a big corporation like Prudential and a small business like the mom and pop shops that are opening up right around Prudential Towers. And we will all come back, I promise, and they will all be supported post-pandemic. But what's really important there is that you have leaders of major anchor institutions, the cultural institutions. Let's not forget, Lyneir's been a pioneer of this. The arts is a huge contributor to the economy and to entrepreneurship. So when we think about what NJPAC does, what the Newark Museum of Art does, what Newark Symphony Hall is doing amazing things, thinking about Black entrepreneurship and investment, creating a whole Black investment capital group to think about how to really bring that Newark Symphony Hall out in the front. So again, it goes to this notion of stackable institutions, that you don't have to think about entrepreneurs as crowded in some little lane by themselves. You can think about the whole ecosystem of big corporate support, which we have wonderful potential in Newark. And the corporations have stepped to the table, absolutely. I mean, in our Hire by Live Local initiative, they have stepped to the table. So we have big ones, we have cultural institutions, we have incredible educational and hospitals and medical institutions, all of which can create an ecosystem of anchor institutions that then help the entrepreneurs really fit in and thrive. And we can get the kind of social capital networks. And I really want to emphasize the notion of how important for our next diverse generation it is that they get social capital networks. That's what Braven does. It really creates in a whole set of mentors from institutions, big and small, corporations, big, entrepreneurs, as mentors. They create for first generation students and potential entrepreneurs a social capital network. One of Lyneir's colleagues, Nancy DiTomaso, does some wonderful work on what she calls, which is a Chuck Tilley phrase, opportunity hoarding. Without any intentional bias, or maybe without intentional bias, most of us when we see opportunities out there, we give them to people who look like us. Well, how are these students, these potential entrepreneurs, going to get those opportunities unless we think deliberately about building social capital networks? So it's both real capital and it's social capital. So when we think about, as Lyneir said, digital marketing folks helping entrepreneurs set up the kinds of get beyond the digital divide that so many local people are behind and actually set up the kinds of digital marketing that will put their business on the map. And then they get mapped by Kevin Lyon's group into the procurement that all these big corporations do. It's a really virtuous cycle, and we all need to be somewhere on that cycle together.
So you mentioned that there are many companies that have obviously been partnered with Rutgers for a long time and provided different kinds of support. Before we go to questions from our attendees, one of the questions that had come up was there are individuals and corporate representatives listening today. So what kinds of support are you looking for? How can they help? How can they get involved? This is for some companies, it's been part of their culture for a long time. For some of them, they're trying to figure out how to make it a part of their culture. So
Yes.
how can they get involved?
So we have many ways for individuals and corporations to get involved, right? So my ask on this call is to pick two, right? I'm gonna give you 5, pick 2, right? Invest in our angel investment fund, right? If you wanna get capital, and this is something we stood up, my wife and I invested $5,000 of our own money, and we found other people to do the same thing. So if you're an individual and you wanna do something that has, micro action that has a macro impact, I invite you to learn more about our angel investment fund. Individual as well, get involved with our incubators or our capacity building programs. If the corporations have the ability, I mentioned, some of them, PNC and Prudential and JP Morgan Chase recently, dollars, participate, judge in our competitions, right? Help us shape and create new programs that will help entrepreneurs, open the procurement doors. As you know, I'm very excited about our work with Prudential and RWJ Barnabas, that is really, work to help entrepreneurs. So be a mentor. Jasmine Cordero, who's run our programs now with such commitment for over 10 years, always talks about the fact that we need more mentors, right? To help us, help these companies grow, right? We are especially looking for tech mentors and digital marketing mentors. So to the extent that you have an expertise or the company has an expertise, we would love to have it. Help us, send us more early stage companies. If you know of entrepreneurs in the community that should be connected with our state university, we're always looking for new entrepreneurs with tech startup ideas or new businesses that are trying to grow. And then finally, the big one. So, for 10 years, it's not exactly selling chicken dinners, but every year we go out and we raise capital to run our programs. The best in class program, when I look across the country, they have an endowment. So we want to endow our center. We want to name our center. We want to raise $10 million to name our center. So to the extent that you have wherewithal or relationship, or just a connection to this work of empowering entrepreneurs of color, of strengthening communities, of making that connection between entrepreneurship and economic development, we invite you, pick 2, and join us.
Great. And I'm just going to say this event will be recorded and we can share. So anybody that's listening, if you know of somebody who might be interested, feel free to share this, and let's pay it forward. Chancellor Cantor, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Lyneir said it perfectly, but what I would add is that there are a lot of pro bono services that can really make a difference to small, mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs. I mean, so legal, obviously our entrepreneurship legal clinic is really taking off in terms of helping. The kinds of technology services that Lyneir talked about, the kind of reskilling and upskilling and training of individuals who work in those businesses. So there are a whole bunch of things that we out there in both the educational and the corporate world take for granted that we have, that could be skills that are passed on in a pro bono way. you know, I think there's no question that the support of Bank of America's community projects and the support of other banks, as Lyneir said, is hugely important, especially in a context where we know that there's been a history of discriminatory lending. I think interrogating the notion of the predictive analytics that we often use, and J.D. Vea in the business school has done amazing work thinking about how you can incentivize businesses to buy vacant land and help entrepreneurs, but you have to have the right predictive analytics to do that. Well, that's not a straightforward deal, right? So the kinds of mentoring, the coaching, the social capital network is really critical, but also interrogating our own practices. That is, how do we do appraisals? How do we do lending? What are the hiring analytics we use? How do we look in a non-biased way at who's applying for things? I mean, those things are not unimportant. And I think the more consciousness and deliberate interrogation that our corporate partners and our anchor institutions more generally can do about our practices. I mean, you know, it turned out when Hired by Live Local got going that, you know, Rutgers, we spent a lot of time with our procurement people across the system thinking about how do you do supplier diversity? Are you doing it really well? How do you really think about who you're hiring and who you're procuring from? Those are things that people take for granted in our everyday practices, but we really have to change them. And we need to support that from the C-suite on down and across the playing field of small to large institutions.
Right. Okay, so we have a very limited amount of time left and we've got quite a few questions. So I'm going to try and start lumping them together, and we'll also, there are questions about how to contact us. We will be sending out information about how to get in touch with our various offices and programs after the event. And in the meantime, there are people asking whether CUED is focused only on Newark and how to get into the program. And there is also a broader question about how do you support Black student entrepreneurs and what programs are available. So Lyneir, do you want to start with that? And let's see if I can answer some of these.
I'll do just quickly. About 50% of our work is with entrepreneurs in Newark or in Essex County. So Rutgers is a state university. We have entrepreneurs from the Jersey Shore. We've done some great work in Jersey City. We do work in New Brunswick. So again, this is the state university supporting entrepreneurs across the state. Right? We initially started with a circle around Newark. Our work with students is really giving them exposure and connections to existing entrepreneurs. That really is the focus of my work. As I said, there are a whole host of other programs that support student entrepreneurship. My focus is helping students connect, understand real world, what it means to run a business, you know, what it means to, you make a payroll or miss a payroll, all right, that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's the work that we do. So that's, you know, rapid answers.
Okay. I would also add to that we help make connections with all our anchor partners. So we send students to Audible, we send students to Newark Venture Partners, we send students, Ted Baker's work with the Urban Solutions Lab at the Honors Living Learning Community. And if you haven't met kids from HLLC, you're missing out on the talent of the future, I'm telling you. And they really know where they're going and what they want to do. And they're all turned on to the notion of entrepreneurship.
Right. And I'd also like to mention from the broader Rutgers entrepreneurs standpoint that there are several resources available across the university for students who are entrepreneurs and are trying to build and grow a business. There is a program called Rutgers iCore, which allows you to do customer discovery and work with mentors. And it's open to students as well as faculty, alumni, and even some members of the community. And I know that they have a push right now to help diverse teams to grow and build their strategy. We have small business development centers on campuses, and we have the Entrepreneurship Law Clinic. There is a food innovation center, makerspace, eco-complex, which focuses on clean tech and the environment. So there are many different resources available. And probably your best bet is to contact us, and we can help you to connect with those places.
Thank you so much for mentioning our partnership with the SBDC, Small Business Development Center. Big, important part of our university. Mukesh runs this CTEC program. I mean, again, there's so many, opportunities. And really over 1,000 students every semester, every year, are taking entrepreneurship courses now, right? In our undergraduate, minor or concentration in an MBA pro. So, again, our students are, our bread and butter, and obviously we want to create more opportunities for them.
Right, definitely. And so the business school offers the programs like RSVP and CTEC, and the Office for Research offers programs for funding projects that are being developed in Rutgers labs by faculty and students. So there are many different places you can go. So do connect with us for that.
Let's not forget the artists. So
yes.
Come to Newark and go to Express Newark, and you will see 3D design studios producing protective equipment and students doing it for the pandemic. So everywhere.
Absolutely.
Across here.
Right.
Entrepreneurship is the new liberal art. That's what I'm championing.
To quote Ted Baker.
Right.
And so there were some questions about getting help with digital marketing, social media, and setting up a business in New Jersey and so on. So I know that the Small Business Development Center provides some of those resources. People are asking how to get in touch with Q'd. Would you like to give us some?
So literally, if you just do Rutgers Q'd in Google search, I do most of my social media work through LinkedIn. So it's Lyneir Richardson at LinkedIn. And again, I'd be happy to quarterback. As I said, this doesn't happen because of me. There's, Arturo Sario does great work. Jasmine Cordero, Sadie. So we have a team, a small team, but a team of committed people. Jeff Robinson, as I mentioned earlier. So I'd be happy to sort of make the connection. Here's SBDC. Go talk to Mukesh. Here's what's happening at Express Newark. There's, as the chancellor mentioned, great programs all around.
Right. Okay. Now there were a few questions about funding and investors. So if you could briefly touch on this. So question about when investors are worried about the risk of investing in teams from underrepresented minorities, or people who may not have the resources already available to them. How do you mitigate the risk? How do you convince them that this is a worthwhile investment? And
I really appreciate that question for a number of reasons. So first of all, when we set up our angel fund, we really took specific measures to de-risk things for our investors. We got a big grant that allowed us to hire a best-in-class fund managers, formed over 30 funds across the country. And because of the grants, it doesn't cost our investors anything. So we have due diligence, really excellent meetings. We have our federal grant opportunity, which again de-risks the capital that's been provided. I should also add that our work is really focusing on helping entrepreneurs create investable business models with a focus on, can this be profitable? Is it scalable? Will it have good cash flows? And our programs are run by entrepreneurs. I always tell people I run a business. I'm on the cover of Cranes and Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and I wiped out as well. So I got battle scars and war wounds. Mukesh, Jeff Robinson, and so many other entrepreneurs in our programs. We're both thinking about this, but we've done it. We've lost money. We made money. We've invested our own capital. So we understand what it means to be an investor, and our money is here as well. So I just invite people who say, I have the wherewithal. I believe that capital is necessary. I don't want to just do grant making. I'd like to do some investing. And I have a friend that says, if you invest in us, you know, we don't need charity. And so my focus is, can we get more people to invest in entrepreneurs of color and help them create businesses that will scale and that will grow.
Right. So, and one final quick question was about, what do investors look for in teams? And I know, or in a startup that they're going to invest in, and often the team is the first thing they look at. So can you comment on that?
No, clearly, you know, there's all kind of research around, you know, the increasing probability of success when there's a team of entrepreneurs. Someone manages, someone markets, someone makes it. So, you know, early on, and most of our, especially in our technology startup world, we're focused on helping the entrepreneurs assemble teams that, you know, have different expertise. So absolutely, the requirement and the strategic advantage of putting together the right team, we recognize it, and we preach that as well.
Great. And I would jump in again and recommend Scott Page's book on the diversity bonus, because one of the most interesting things about innovation teams is that the more different insights and lived experiences that can be brought to bear in a particular team predicts, and he's a complex systems guy, he uses complex models to predict this, predicts better outcomes and better business. So one thing one should look for in a team, you should look for diversity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I just saw something pop up. What's the fund? Black and Latino Angel Fund.com. Black and Latino Angel Fund.com. That's our angel investment fund.
Thank you, Lyneir. Okay, so yes, we'll thank you everyone in the audience for joining us. If you have any general questions, you can send them to entrepreneurs@research.rutgers.edu. We will get them to the chancellor, to Lyneir, to CUDE, to anybody else that you're trying to reach. We can provide more information about resources available. You can also visit the CUDE website and the Angel Investor Fund. And we will be sending you a survey as well as an email as part of an email after the event. So you can provide us feedback and connect with us, whichever way works best for you. Chancellor and Lyneir, thank you so much. This has been a really enlightening event, and it's great to hear about all the important activity happening at Rutgers to help Black and Latinx entrepreneurs.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
I do as well.
Thank you.